أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله نحمده سبحانه ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى من تبعهم وعمل بعملهم واستنى بسنتهم إلى يوم الدين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. أما بعد. All praise and thanks and gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our Prophet and Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the wrongs of our deeds. Whoever is guided by Allah will never go astray, and whoever goes astray can only be guided by Allah. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah alone without partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is Allah's messenger, prophet, and servant. I remind myself and I remind you to follow the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and to apply them to your daily lives. My dear brothers and sisters, today's khutbah is really to bring attention to a problem that we need to begin taking serious steps to solve. So I'm, in a way, sounding an alarm. I'm not going to solve the problem today. I don't even know how to solve the problem, to be honest with you. I know I have some ideas, but I think we have amongst us, by us I mean the Muslim community in general, great minds who can come together and find real solutions to a problem that is under-recognized, sidelined, and slightly ignored. And this problem has to do with our children, and perhaps more importantly, with our future grandchildren. If we don't set the stage now, then we will lose that generation. Or we won't lose them, they will be lost. We will be gone, but they will be lost. I want to share with you a story. It's a letter, actually, written by a young Muslim woman. It was posted online. She wrote it to a Muslim magazine. Online, there are several Muslim magazines. And she wrote a letter, and it's a very short letter, and I'm going to read it to you. Someone responded to the letter, but the response was inadequate, honestly. But that's a whole other story. But I'm going to read the letter. This is a young Muslim woman who was born and raised in the United States. And like many of our children, her parents brought her to the masjid and she was involved. And then she got a little older, and then college. And then so they go through the phases of life that every young Muslim goes through. So this is her letter. She says, I used to love the deen. Focus on the word used to. Okay, I used to love the deen. But now I see it as I imagine a non-Muslim would see it. I often ask myself, what's the point? Why does it need to be so strict and so complicated? I don't feel a soul connection with my deen as I used to in the past. The issue is I don't have someone I can sit and speak to frankly about all of this, because in my community, they put me on a pedestal of how I used to be when I was younger. They don't realize that I'm not like that anymore. Even if I try to be honest about what I'm feeling now, they unintentionally twist it to be a good thing, because they've always had a good image of me. At the same time, I feel embarrassed to show the truth. I basically live in a facade. On the outside, I'm a practicing, God-fearing Muslim, but I have to hide what I feel on the inside. Talking to non-Muslims is not an option, because they also have seen me as defending my faith, and I would never want to be the reason that someone looks down on Islam. I have no one I can speak to about how I feel, and the feelings are not going away. I want to believe that Islam is the only truth, and that everyone knows that in their heart, and that no one is truly happy without Islam. But I look around me and I think to myself, these people look pretty happy. I feel torn between two worlds. My old one, full of religious Muslims and da'wah, and my new one, in which I feel compassion towards the world, and I want to value individual choices, and I see religion as a restriction. That's it. That's her letter. And it exemplifies the point that I want to try to make, because I know many young Muslims, not just in Santa Clarita, in the entire Western world, have this same thought. They are torn between two worlds. When they were young, whatever you tell them, they believe. They're young. But then as they grow up and mature and explore the world, they begin to question Islam. They begin to question what we taught them when they were little. And guess what? They have the right to do that. In fact, Islam encourages them to do that. The failure is that we don't provide the answers. That's the problem. They have the questions, but we are not providing the satisfactory answers. We are providing boilerplate answers that are no longer valid for our location and for our time. And that's what we need to fix. Not only that, but if we don't provide the answer, someone else will. And that someone else will not be a Muslim. It will be of a different ideology. Whatever you may call it. It may be another religion. It may be a philosophy of some kind. It may be a political ideology. Whatever it may be. But it's providing answers that are not from our faith. And that, my dear brothers, is the alarm I'm sounding today. We need to change that. We need to work in our community to provide those answers, to be available to the young Muslims so they can ask their questions. In fact, we should encourage them to ask questions. Let them come forward with what they're worried about and what they're anxious about and what they're not sure about, no matter how difficult those questions may be. And yes, not each and every one of us will be capable of answering it, but someone in our community will be. And we need to garner our talents and our knowledge and our people to answer those questions. Our young Muslims deserve nothing less than that. And we have failed them utterly in providing those answers. Sayyidina Nuh, alayhi salam, his son was not a believer. The surprising thing is that he did not know that his son was not a believer. That's the problem, you see. Because when he built the ship and the flood happened and all the believers started going on the ship, his son was clinging to a tree. Allah tells us in the Quran, He said, Ya bunayya irkab ma'ana wa la takun ma'al kafirin. Oh my dear son, ride with us on the ship and don't stay with the non-believers. Allah had to tell him, your son is not with you. Allah is the one who informed Nuh alayhi salam that his son is not part of him. Leave him alone. He's not one of the believers. We don't want to be in that situation. We don't want to be in the middle of a flood and suddenly we find out that our son is not with us or our daughter is not with us. That is a tragedy no father or mother wants to face. But many often do. And it is tragic and it is indeed sad. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his children died young. But there were many other young Muslims in the community in Medina at the time. And he made a special effort to teach them. And he didn't teach them just how to ride a horse, or he didn't teach them the practical things of this world. He taught them about their faith. Abdullah ibn Abbas was the cousin of Rasulullah, his younger cousin. Al-Abbas is the uncle of Rasulullah. He was sitting on the animal behind Rasulullah. And Rasulullah began to teach him, and he told him, Ya Ghulam, oh young man, I want to teach you some words. I'm going to teach you a few words. Be mindful of Allah. He will be mindful of you. If you know Allah, Allah will know you. If you recognize Allah, Allah will recognize you. If you're thinking of Allah, Allah will be thinking of you. Be mindful of Allah, you will find Him by your side. If you ask Allah. And if you need help, ask Allah's help. And know that if this entire ummah gathered to provide you with benefit, they would not be able to do so except by the decree of Allah. And if the entire ummah gathered to harm you, they would not be able to do so except by the decree of Allah. The pens have been lifted and the pages have dried. That's it. Everything's ordained. Everything's decreed by Allah. He's teaching this young man. These are deep concepts. These are not simple things. But he's teaching him the concept at a young age so it will be ingrained in his mind. And that's partly where we have not met our obligation as parents and grandparents. Luqman, who was not a prophet, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dedicated an entire surah to him and describes his story with his son in multiple ayat in that surah. Luqman sat down with his son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the story. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. And Luqman told his son while he was giving him advice. What is the first thing he told him? Don't spend too much money. He said, يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. And he said, Ya Bunayya. Bunayya in Arabic is an expression of love. My son. My dear son. That's what it literal translation is, my dear son. It's different than Ya Ibni in Arabic. Ibni means just my son. But Bunayya means my dear son, my close son. He says, my dear son, I'm giving you some advice. Do not associate anyone with Allah. We don't even address that because we say, well, nobody's idol worship, doing idol worship nowadays, although many are. But we fail to teach the basics and the core of Islam to our children. He also tells his son, Ya Bunayya. Once again, he uses the term Ya Bunayya, my dear son. Aqim as-salah. Establish the prayer. Wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha 'anil munkar. Encourage that which is good and forbid that which is evil. Wasbir. He teaches him values that he needs to have in his behavior. Wasbir, and be patient. Ala ma asaba. Be patient towards what afflicts you. Inna dhalika min azmi al-umur. This is the right way to do things. This is the proper way to do things. Yet he's teaching his son the core concepts of belief. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam one day was sitting in his home with Al-Hasan. Al-Hasan is the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Hasan is the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and Fatima. Fatima is the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Al-Hasan is the grandson of Rasulullah. He was a young child. And while they were sitting there, someone brought some food to the house of Rasulullah, but it wasn't food for them to eat. It was food of zakat. So people gave fruits and vegetables, and Rasulullah ﷺ had to give the orders on how to distribute that produce that was paid as zakat. So it was not for the house of Rasulullah ﷺ, this was for all the believers in Medina. Al-Hasan, who was a young child, when he saw the fruits, amongst them were dates, and dates were sweet. They didn't have chocolate back then. They didn't have candies and ice cream, and all. They didn't have that. So to the little kids, the dates were sweet. So he saw one, he grabbed it, and he wanted to eat it. So Rasulullah ﷺ took it out of his hand. And he said to him, young child, he said, kakh in Arabic is an expression that means, this is not good. Leave it alone. But the amazing thing is he didn't just take it out of his hand and tell him not to eat it. He said to him, we are not supposed to eat from the foods of sadaqah. Sadaqah in Arabic also can be the word for zakat. So he taught him the reason. He didn't just tell him don't eat it. He explained to him why he's telling him not to eat it. Subhanallah. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu. Anas ibn Malik was not a relative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but his mother wanted him to be raised in the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she dedicated Anas to be the servant of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when he was a young child, he was in the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, helping him with different things around the house. But as Anas grew older, the Prophet ﷺ started to teach him. So he tells him, and again, this is a very simple story, but it brings the point. He says to him, Ya Bunay, so he's a servant, but he addresses him as my son, my dear son. He says, Ya Bunay, if you enter your house, so he's teaching him, when you enter your house, say salam. Salam. You don't just walk in. You're supposed to announce your arrival. And you're supposed to greet those who are already in the house. Your wife, your kids, whoever's there, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, whoever's in the house. He's saying to him, when you enter the house, say salam. Greet everybody. That would have been sufficient, right? He taught him the rule. The rule is, when you enter the house, you say salam, but he did not stop there. He said, when you do that, then your family will receive the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he not only taught him the rule, he taught him the reason behind it. Say salam so that your family can receive the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you do so. A Sahabi by the name of Jundub lived in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in the time of Abu Bakr, and in the time of Umar, and the time of Uthman. So he lived a long life. And he saw how young children were being brought up during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, during the time of Abu Bakr, during the time of Umar, radiallahu anhu, and during the time of Uthman. So a span of more than 20 years. He saw how people were being raised. And he said something very interesting. He said things have changed. You know, older people, they always say that, right? I mean, you know, I'm in my 50s now, so I always say that. I tell my kids, oh, things are different now than they were when I was 20. Of course they're different. I mean, it's a stupid thing for me to say, but we say it because they are different. We see the differences. So this Sahabi, he said things are different now than during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, listen to this very carefully because it applies to us. He said, now, you teach your kids Quran first. Then you teach them Iman. Iman is the faith. But during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we taught them Iman first and then taught them Quran. See the difference? That's how he noticed. We're in the same boat. We can't wait. As soon as they can talk, we teach them Quran. Right. But do we have discussions about faith like Luqman had? No, we don't. We assume they know. We cannot assume anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 10 years in Mecca was teaching them about faith. He did not assume they would just know. Don't forget that. That's the truth. Allah tells us in the Quran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum naran wa quluha an-nas wal hijara alayha malaikatun ghilazun shidad. O you who believe. Now in Arabic he says, after O you who believe, he says qu. Qu is an order. In Arabic, the verbs have a past tense, present tense, future tense, and an order tense. So this is a verb that's an order, meaning it's not optional. It's not you can think about it or I recommend. No, he gives an order, and the order is qu. Qu means protect and prevent. Protect and prevent. Not solve the problem later after it happens. No, you're trying to shield and protect and prevent. Protect and prevent what? Prevent your family and yourselves. Allah's giving us an order. Protect yourself and your family from what? From the hellfire that is fueled by people and by rocks. And upon it are angels who are tough. Allah's giving us an order. He's saying you got to do something. Who means you have to actually do something. You can't just sit passively and say, oh, we'll see what happens to the kids. You're not going to see what happens. You have to take action to protect them and to teach them and to prevent them from one day entering the hellfire. The Muslims were in Al-Andalus for over 800 years. Al-Andalus is current day Spain and Portugal that area. And they were in the southern part and middle part of the Iberian Peninsula, not in the northern part. The northern part was inhabited by the Goths. The Goths were Christians. But these people were bitter because the Muslims took their land from them. They liberated the land, but they see it as an occupation. They saw the Muslims as being occupying their land. So they were upset. And they were planning and plotting to take it back by force. But they were weak. And they were divided and they were not able to confront the Muslims and take their land back. But they waited patiently for 8 centuries. And eventually they did take it back. But the stories behind that are quite fascinating. Early in the days of Islam in Al-Andalus, the Goths sent a spy to see what's going on. And the spy went to the city of Cordoba, now Cordoba, and he entered the park and he saw 2 young Muslim boys. They were sitting in the park. And what they were doing was reciting Quran. So they had memorized, and one was reciting to the other would correct him if he made a mistake, and then they would switch roles. 100 years after that, another spy came to Cordoba. This time he saw something different. He saw 2 young boys who did not learn the Quran, but they were memorizing hadith. The Quran they were reading, they were not memorizing. He went back to the Goths up north and he said, these Muslims are kind of shaky. They're not as strong as they were, as the previous generations told us. 100 years after that, another spy would go to the Muslim lands. And he would go to the same park and he would see 2 young boys. And this time, they were reciting poetry to each other. There was no Quran and there was no Hadith. He went back north and he said, these are still people of knowledge. They're still learning, but it looks like they don't care that much about their religion. The Goths waited patiently. A couple of 100 years after that, another spy would come down and enter the park. And he would see 1 young boy sitting there crying. Crying, no reading, no poetry, nothing, just crying. And he comes to him and he says, "Why are you crying?" And he says, "I'm crying because I had fallen in love with a dancer, but she left me. And so I'm crying." This spy went back north to the Goths and he said, "Now is the time." And indeed it was. They took back every inch of the Iberian Peninsula and the Muslims were expelled and lost completely. Don't think that we as Muslims have any future without our children. That's a fallacy. That's fantasy thinking. That's not real life. We have to make an effort and a serious one. Again, I'm bringing to light a problem. I'm not bringing you solutions. I realize that. But there are minds much better than mine, much more skilled than me, much more talented, who have experience in these issues, who need to come together and try to find a solution to this problem. Because it is real and it exists. And if we act like it doesn't, not we will lose, our children will lose. And our grandchildren will be even more lost. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله ولي الصالحين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I don't want to leave you today with absolutely no proposed solutions. So I do have some, and they are small, they're not big. Number one, be a Muslim yourself. That's number one. Now that's easier said than done. Many of us say, Alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim, la ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. That's the beginning. That's only the first pillar. We still have 4 others. And we haven't even gotten into the pillars of Iman. We haven't even gotten into behaviors and mannerisms of Islam. We haven't gotten into any of that. Be a Muslim yourself. Your kids learn more by seeing than by you talking to them. You could talk to them for an hour. How much do you think they're going to remember of what you told them? 5%. I'm not making that up. Studies have shown that 5%, that's all they remember. After a week, they only remember 5%. After 2 years, 2%. But when they see you being righteous, being honest, being truthful, being compassionate, being fair, that will stick with them for the rest of their life. They're going to say, my father would not have done this. My mother would not do this. That's what they're going to think when they're 50 years old. That's what, honestly, I don't remember anything my dad told me, but I remember everything he did. Everything. And when I think of what I should do, I think about him. What would he have done? May Allah have mercy upon him. And think about that with your own parents. You the same way. You think what they did, not what they said. So be a Muslim. That's number one. Number two, time. Time. There is a saying in English, the way children spell money is T-I-M-E. The way children spell the word money is T-I-M-E, not M-O-N-E-Y. No, they don't care about your money. They want your time. Spend time with them. And the time doesn't have to be a lecture. Watch something with them, some educational thing, read a book with them, take them to the park and play with them, whatever it may be. And this has to start when they're little. You can't come when they're 18 and say, I want to spend time with you now. That's not important. Why? Why is time important? You have to establish trust and earn it. Don't assume that your son is going to come talk to you about his problems, or your daughter is going to come to you or to your wife about her problems. No. They will only do that if you've established trust from the time they were 1 year old. That's when they will come to you for everything. That's all I have to do for you. I would encourage this center and the other centers here in the Santa Clarita Valley and the centers in the San Fernando Valley to come together and try to have programs that listen to our children and to answer their questions. We have a lot of great people who are scholars, who are knowledgeable, much more than me, who can answer these questions. We should try to bring them together so that they have a satisfactory answer to their doubts, to their inquisitions, to their questions, which are real and which deserve an answer. Before we make dua, I want to say a word about what we are seeing happen in Afghanistan. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect the people of Afghanistan and to give peace and tranquility to them. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve them of any suffering that they are feeling now or they will feel in the future. Afghanistan has a complicated history, as all of you know. And the Afghani people have been through a lot of duress and distress over centuries. But they are resilient people. They are strong believers. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them patience. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reconcile between them. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring peace and tranquility to their communities and to their societies and to their families. They are our brothers. Don't think this is something we're just seeing on TV. It doesn't matter to us. It does matter to us. Our hearts bleed when we see them suffer, no matter what it is. Make a dua for them, that Allah give them peace and tranquility and relieve them of what they are going through today. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تبارك ربنا وتعاليت لك الحمد على ما قضيت ولك الشكر على ما أنعمت به وأوليت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك ونؤمن بك ونتوكل عليك اللهم اهدنا لصالح الأعمال لا يهدي لصالحها إلا أنت اللهم اهدنا لأحسن الأخلاق لا يهدي لأحسنها إلا أنت اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها مردنا. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك، وبطاعتك عن معصيتك، وبفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك عن كلمتي الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين بفضلك ورحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. إنك يا ربنا على ما تشاء قدير وبالإجابة جدير. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. وآخر دعوانا دائما والحمد لله رب العالمين. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
حقا لا إله إلا الله. استووا واعتدلوا وتراصوا أثابني وأثابكم الله. Please straighten the lines and close the gaps. Please make sure your mask is covering your nose and your mouth. Try to cover both nose and mouth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم الله سمع الله لمن حمده الله 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 السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله Are you seeing a lot of COVID children? Younger. Adolescent. But they probably bounce back quickly. They're strong. It's false. How are you? Oh, yes, yes. I have it on my phone. I'll hit it on the head. Unfortunately, the response not, I didn't think it was. I mean, you'll see it. I'll send you the link. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Oh, he's very good. Yes. I think I'm doing one in September. He sent me the text. I couldn't do this one. He wanted me to do this one. I said I cannot. But September. He sent me the date. Hello. He sent me a list of questions. Hello. He's like, something on that day.